Welcome back. My name's Guy, and this is the third video of a series I'm doing of building a round table. Previously, I've shown you how I made the legs and also how I made these cool veneered curved aprons. Now, if you missed those episodes, I'm going to leave a link in the corner for you to take a look at those later. This time, I'm going to show you how I do the joinery for all this. There's bridle joints that are cut into the curved face and on the back of this. And I also had to make a jig. I love jigs. To put the dominoes in here. So this was a lot of fun to do, and it was a pretty decent challenge. So stick around and let's get to work. Now that I've got the skirts kind of complete, I matched it up to the leg, and I'm looking at it, and it just seems very thick. I posted a picture of this on Instagram, and I got some really good response from a lot of really good woodworkers. Thanks, guys. And what I came up with is putting a bead around the edge. My whole thought process on the top was it's going to overhang 1.5 inches. And when you're looking down at the table, it's only 26 inches high. You're not going to see the skirt, so I wanted to make the skirt a little wider. But the edge here just seems way too plain for this piece. So this bead is a 3/8 inch bead. I'm going to use it as an applied molding instead of trying to make it underneath, so it's almost cock beading in a certain sense. I found a nice piece of very straight grain cherry all along the bottom. I've got my router table set up, and I'm going to show you how I make that beading. So what I've got my router table is a 1/8 inch round over bit, which actually gives me a 1/4 inch bead. Again, I'm going to take this real nice straight grain right here because it's going to bend a little bit easier. I've got a feather board to hold it tight against the fence. I'm just going to make one pass and then flip it around and do the other side so I get that bead on both sides of this board. So now I've got that bead on both sides of this board. I've got the table saw blade raised up just enough to cut it away, and the fence is over, I think, 7/16 of an inch, which should cut that off. If not, I can make a small adjustment in the fence and get that cut off. I'm just going to make one pass, spin it around, and then do the other side. Well, it was pretty darn close. There's a little bit of a piece of fuzz here. I can just take that off with my fingers and clean it up with a little sandpaper. But I think that's going to work real well. I'm real confident that that's not going to break on me. Boy, I hope so. But if not, I'm going to keep this piece around. If I do get one that splits when I apply it, I can just go back and make it again. So I've got those pieces cut, and they bent pretty easy. I'm not going to be using this form for a couple days, and it's going to be a couple days before I install these too. I have to do this after I do some of the joinery on the table. So I put them on this form and clamp them up. I'm just going to let them sit like that and get used to that bend, and hopefully they'll be okay. So what this jig is for is to take one of the curved rails, I can put it up in here and clamp it down, and then get the front of this perfectly perpendicular to my tabletop. And then I'll be able to use that to plunge dominoes in. So now that I have that clamped in there, I can take my sliding rule where I've already marked out the distance from the edge I want the dominoes. Make a mark here. Make a mark there. And now I know where that domino is going to go. Now I can take my leg and put it face down on the top. Line that up at the top, and then carry my lines in for where the dominoes are going to go in the legs. So I'm going to be putting 6x40 millimeter dominoes in here. They're going to go 25 millimeters into the apron and 15 millimeters into the leg. Now, one of the things I'm not going to be able to use is my fence here for the height adjustment because this is curved. I won't be able to get good registration against that. So I took some measurements, and it turns out this piece of 1/2 inch plywood was perfect at 15/32. So I'm able to take this. I still am going to lower this fence so I can use the viewfinder to line up the crosshair with the mark. and just make these plunges. I'm going to use the wide setting in the aprons and the tight setting in the legs. So here's the slots for the dominoes. I just need to do the other side of this piece and then the other apron. So I'm getting ready to cut the domino slots in the leg. I've got it marked up. I've got the fence height set at 19 millimeters, which will put the slot directly in the center of this leg. I've got it at the tightest setting, and I've made sure to change my depth adjustment to 15 millimeters. So now that I've got that ready, all I need to do is cut the domino slots. So after I got all the domino slots cut, I thought I'd do a dry fit just to see how it looks. And it came out really well. I pulled everything tight together with a band clamp. The joints are all nice and tight on all the way around it. One thing I will tell you though, this is going to be a bear to glue up once I get glue in those domino slots. I'm going to have to think about that for a little while. But for now I need to start thinking about getting the bridle joints done over here and over here for the other two legs. So I'm getting ready to start out to mark where I need to cut for the bridle joints. Unfortunately, there's no good way to do this with power tools, so I'm going to have to do it all by hand. And this is not my strong point, but I'm sure going to give it a go. Now I've marked out where the rail begins and ends. I've also put a piece of blue tape that's perfectly parallel with my pattern here of where that leg needs to be. And I'll show you what that's for in a minute. So I've got my center line here. I need to line up my center line and then line up the marks where it begins and ends. Okay, now that I've got that, I can take one of my legs, I'm going to put it against there, and what that tape is for is when I move this to the side, it gives me an actual stop almost. So I can make sure that that's exactly where I need it to be. Then I'm going to take my marking knife, I'm going to make a tick mark up here, and a tick mark here. All right, now that I've got that done, I can do the same thing on the other side, and again using that piece of tape. All right, now that I've got those, I need to carry them down the front and down the back. Now that I have these divots cut, I know where to plane down to, and again I need to get this surface flat so I can continue to mark out the rest of this. So I'm just going to take a low angle plane here, just very carefully take some shavings off this, staying between those lines until I get it, or get a flat spot. Now I've got that kind of flat spot right there. That gives me something positive to register my combination square against. So I'm just going to put that on there. I'm going to mark in 5/8 of an inch on both sides. Now I know that the mortises for these bridle joints are 1/2 inch, and here's a setup bar for that. So I'm going to take that same setup bar, I'm going to put it up against that knife line I just made, and then I can mark across here. Now I've got those lines drawn, I'm just going to mark it in a little bit with my pencil here so I can see. And I'm going to saw down to this line here. And I'm going to saw down from here to this line, and on the back to this line. Now, because I do have those two flat spots right there, I am going to be able to use my router plane to trim this top piece to the desired depth. On the bottom, I'm just going to have to use a good old-fashioned chisel and pray for the best. Alright, so I've got that one side done. This leg is not going to fit, I know that. It's going to be fat 32nd too wide. That's okay. I'm going to deal with that later. I don't want to make these too big because I don't want any slop in that leg. So I need to turn the piece over, put it in the vise, and do the same thing to this side. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm not going to be able to use my router plane. I'm going to have to rely on chisels to do it, but I'll get through it. Well, I spent a few minutes with a hand plane getting this down, and this is not my best work, by the way, but I'm pretty happy with the fit. It's a little loose on the bottom, but then it snugs up at the top. The joints are pretty tight. I mean, very close inspection, there's maybe 1/128th of an inch there. It's a very, very tiny gap, but for me, I'm pretty happy with that. I also checked the leg for square, and it is square, so that's always a good thing. So now that that's done, I just got to go do the other one and we should be all set. So I got the other bridle joint done. I did a dry fit and everything came together really, really sweet. Joints are nice and tight. Everything's nice and square. The table doesn't rock. I'm really, really happy with the way this came out. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun doing these bridle joints, man, I tell you. They came together real nice, very strong. The domino joints came together really well, and everything looks really good. Next time I'm going to start working on the top. I'm going to cut the veneer for the sunburst design and also the curly maple border that's going to go around it. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.